SD Metals and Markets is brought to you by Doc Steels. Find the best deals on gold and silver bullion online at sdbullion.com/deals. This week's deals include intro pricing on Fort Moultrie, the final 5-ounce silver ATB coin of 2016, Silver Shield Freedom Girl rounds at just $249 over spot, any quantity, and our final inventory allocation of 30-gram 2016 gold pandas. Find the best deals on gold and silver online at sdbullion.com/deals. This is the Doc and Eric Dubin with the SD Weekly Metals and Markets Wrap. Joining us today is a special guest. He's the newest member of the SD team, Elijah Johnson. It's great to have you on the show, Elijah.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, for those listeners who are not aware, haven't seen, Elijah joined the team, and he's providing just about daily exclusive interviews. He's provided some really big ones this week. Everything from John Rubino, Sprott's John Embry, MTB president, and MTB is one of the U.S. Mint's APs. Their president, Roy Friedman, some insider info on the wholesale market, especially with silver. He had Rob Kirby on, Bick Swear, and a lot more to come. So it's going to be a lot of fun and a great addition to have you join the team, Elijah.
Well, great. It's been a pleasure joining the team, definitely.
All right. Well, let's start off with the markets here, guys. And we were just chatting before the show that hasn't been a lot of excitement in gold and silver, but it certainly looks like silver particularly has bottomed. I was listening to Eric Sprott a little while ago in his comments this morning, and he concurs or agrees that gold and silver have bottomed and likely have a good quarter in store here. So what's your take here, Eric, on the trading, not only of this week, but kind of as we zoom out a little bit, a big picture here after just the brutal beat down the metals have sustained over the last month or two?
Sure. Tuesday before last Tuesday, we bottomed in silver and kind of flirted with testing that bottom again on an intraday basis that Wednesday following. And all the while, we've been able to see the speculators respond as you would expect them to respond. And they are looking at that 200-day moving average and buying silver and responding with a continued accumulation following the attack that we saw when we opened October. And we had discussed last week about how the premiums in physical are reflecting the fact that the market is tightening up, and we'll get to that when you do the discussion about what's going on with the physical markets, and that also confirms what we're seeing. The miners also are reflecting bottom fishing behavior, and all of this is really healthy. It's interesting in the timing and the sequence of how this is all unfolding in relation to the November 8th election. And I suspect that as we get closer to the election, people are going to get unhinged and a lot nervous about what's going on. And that'll probably translate into some pressure on the standard equity market, and in turn, maybe even some additional interest in purchasing gold and safe haven assets. So I suspect that as we get closer to the election, that also will help serve as an additional impetus for speculators and so forth to continue to push the metals back after this really nasty attack that we sustained at the start of October. What will happen as far as reaction the day after the election is to some extent anyone's guess. Not entirely sure how the election is going to unfold. I certainly am of the view and have articulated on our show even about how the polling is very skewed, and it's fully documented. It's not a supposition to conclude that the degree to which the mainstream media is spinning the election and possible vote fraud and on, the deck is definitely stacked against a victory for Trump. But at the same time, we've seen things that indicate that the popular support for Trump is vastly larger than the popular support for Hillary. I mean, for example, there have been many YouTube video posted from people who are attending rallies that Hillary hosts, and the turnout is pathetic compared to what's going on with Trump. So those are objective measures about what is the zeitgeist in our country and what's going on. And I suspect that the probability of Trump actually winning is a lot higher than pretty much anybody is giving some credence to. And if he does win, that'll definitely be something that's going to be short-term positive for gold, because the standard reaction from conventional traders will likely conclude that that's going to be possibly opening up turmoil with respect to trade relations and other things that could conceivably affect corporate profits, and just the nervousness of no longer having the opportunity for Hillary to carry on with policies that have, in fact, been the norm for many a year. So that kind of change will possibly, and highly likely, in fact, if Trump were to win, shift markets around in the week, 2 weeks following the election. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out. But as far as next week is concerned, I think that we're probably going to see a pretty decent week. And as we move closer to the election, after this big attack that we had early in October is further in the rear view there, and we'll probably continue to drift on higher with precious metals, in part because people are, in fact, pricing in uncertainty when it comes to what's going to happen on November 4th.
I was just going to add regarding the election, I think I would agree with you that I think it's a lot higher chance than people are saying that Trump could actually pull it off and win the election. I'm hearing that the polls, they're oversampling Democrats, and I know they've done that in the past, for example, in 2008 and 2012, because the fact is that there's more Democrats in the country. But in this situation, it seems like there was, in 2008 and 2012, there was a lot of enthusiasm behind Obama, and that may be part of the reason why more Democrats showed up to vote. But in this election, it seems like there's almost no enthusiasm behind Hillary, and there's a lot of enthusiasm behind Trump. So I'm thinking that might impact voter turnout. And the other thing, one of the things, just a anecdote that I experienced, I report for my college news station. I went to a Trump rally, I think it was back in March or something, and I also went to a Hillary Clinton rally in Toledo, Ohio, just a couple weeks ago. And I think there was like thousands of people at the Trump rally. And when it came to the Clinton rally, it was in this like little kind of like pretty small room comparatively. And yes, there were people that couldn't get in, but it seemed like they had a small room just so that they could say, oh, there are people, waiting outside or waiting outside the doors, just trying to get in, to make it look like there are actually a lot of people who want to be at the rally. But I mean, the Trump rally was it was at an airport in an air hangar. There were thousands of people there. At the Clinton rally, I don't know, maybe 1,000 people showed up at most. It was amazing, the difference that I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen the same thing from an anecdotal perspective. In 2008, in the medical field, nearly every physician and medical person I knew was emphatically behind Obama. They supported Obama, and I mean, these are people that normally I was shocked or surprised that they were supporting Obama. And in this campaign, I kid you not, I met the very first real person who supports Hillary this week. And it was a 20-something millennial female who's a vegetarian, and I mean, pretty stereotypical hardcore Democrat supporter. But literally the first person I've met this entire campaign cycle who's called themselves a Hillary supporter is a real person, not associated with the media. And I've seen maybe 2 Hillary signs in our entire neighborhood, versus in 2008, everywhere you went, everyone was rallying and excited about Obama. So I certainly concur with you guys that there's not a lot of enthusiasm among the Democrat base for Hillary.
Yeah, and your neighborhood has not really changed in terms of its demographics or whatever. I mean, it's an objective measure, even though it is anecdotal. But the number of video comparisons that we've seen I've seen at least 20 rallies documented where the differences between the two are just profound.
As Trump quipped last night, that Al Smith Catholic fundraiser dinner was her biggest crowd of the year for 1,000 people.
One other thing I was gonna mention, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be as surprised as a lot of other people would be if Trump ended up winning. I think it's possible that we could see another situation like Brexit when the polls are showing that one way and then we see, oh, wait, no, it ends up another way. So, on November 8th, maybe the polls are going to be showing that Clinton is ahead 3 points or something like that. And then everyone the evening or the morning wakes up and it shows that Trump has actually won by a large margin.
Yeah.
With the one caveat of in Brexit, in Britain, all the polls were done with via paper by hand. In the U.S., quite a bit of the polling booths are owned by George Soros' company. So,
the other thing too with Brexit that kind of impacted the way the polls were being interpreted by the market and all that. The bookie polls, the betting polls, and betting is just gigantic in throughout the UK. I mean, it's a very popular thing. That actually was informing the expectations about what was going to happen with Brexit, and the polling interpretation was incorrect. And part of the reason why there was this built-in assumption that the Remain camp would in fact carry the day was built on how people were interpreting what bookies were doing. And bookies have to deal with how to manage the risk of being a bookie. And the nature of the way bets were coming in changed the way interpretations of what was going on. And what I mean by that is that it isn't just a single vote for a single bet. It was, in fact, that the lion's share of the money that was going into the mosh pit of the betting pools was far more so reflecting the larger pockets of people who were, in fact, financial interests and other people who had vested interests, and in fact, the Remain camp carrying the day. And those folks were coming to the mosh pit of these betting pools with far bigger pockets and making far bigger bets than the average, person who's just coming and then putting 5 pounds or whatever down and expressing their opinion in the betting pools throughout all of the UK. And that's what happened with the polling. And it's the reason why the polls had faked everybody. It had faked even me at one point. I didn't fully understand what was going on. This time around, when it comes to what's going on in America, I mean, we got manipulated polls, as we talked about before. We've got electronic voting systems that are just kind of squirrely and also being manipulated. We saw that even in the primary. I mean, it's documented that Bernie Sanders was hosed when it came to how electronic machines were processing votes in Arizona, for example. So all of these things are just, it's going to be a really weird election. And then ultimately, presidents are not elected by the popular vote. They're elected by the Electoral College in the United States. And there's a possibility that a lot of these quote-unquote electors that are serving in their capacity in the Electoral College may in fact go rogue and not reflect as much of whatever the media spin and popular sentiment is. And that's kind of been my baseline expectation as well, too. We'll see how that works out. But the fact that Trump needs 270 Electoral College votes to win is a lot easier of a prize, I suspect, for him to achieve than, in fact, dealing with the public vote, the popular vote, and how that may be manipulated and on and on. So this is definitely going to be one of the most interesting presidential elections of the entire history of the United States.
And like Brexit, I think you're in a situation that if Trump does win, you'll see a similar type of market shock to the upside in gold and silver. It might not be to quite the magnitude that Brexit was, just due to the magnitude of the financial impact that Britain leaving the euro was. But I think it'll be a similar type reaction as the market's totally not factoring that into the equation.
Yeah, we'll see. And if he does win, 2-3 months into his term, people might even begin to wonder whether or not he's going to put some pressure on the Federal Reserve and maybe even put some brakes on the liquidity insanity that comes from our financial system. I mean, that's a possibility. He has intimated pretty negative views about the Federal Reserve and the nature of the credit system and how it's gone kind of cuckoo. So, initially, if he were to win, I would expect gold to blast higher. And who knows, 3 months thereafter, maybe people are going to begin to question whether or not the entire rhythm of our, boom, bust, bubble, blowing, bursting, and then reflation efforts of our monetary and financial system and the banking system. I mean, that basically is where we have been in the Greenspan era forward. And the cycle conceivably could theoretically change a little bit, not necessarily completely, because the system is just the way that it is, and we've created this monstrosity that almost needs to feed on itself, to sustain itself. Good thing that none of us are going to be president of the United States.
So if you weren't already rooting for Trump, if you like gold and silver, sounds like you'd be excited if he wins. All right. Well, it should be a interesting 2 or 3 weeks to be sure, with all the daily revelations about each of the candidates. I can only expect that to exponentially increase here as we get down to crunch time. So grab your popcorn and take a seat. It's been a clown show, and I expect that to continue.
You managed to not punch each other out, though, in debate. No fist fights.
No. But let's talk a little bit about the markets, some more here, and what we've been seeing on the physical side. And again, Elijah, you talked with Roy earlier in the week, the president of MTB Coins, and what we've been seeing at SD Bullion is continued record-breaking sales month after month these last 3 or 4 months. I mean, it's mid-October, and we've nearly doubled what our entire 2015 sales were. Silver Eagle sales were pretty large again this past week. Pulling up the numbers here. 1.475 million Silver Eagle coins sold this past week. That brings October Silver Eagle sales to 3.425 million, and year-to-date sales to just over 34 million coins. And we're in mid-October here, and as we were discussing before we started the show, the U.S. Mint can only produce about 1 million coins a week under perfect conditions, of all machines running at full capacity, no federal holidays or anything like that. So that drew down their inventories at least 500,000 coins this week, and the week before last as well. So by my estimate, they probably have somewhere between 2 and 3 million coins, on Silver Eagles I'm talking about here, still stockpiled up. So you're not going to see big moves in premiums or availabilities on Silver Eagles until the U.S. Mint has sold through their stockpile and puts the APs back on allocation again. So that has not happened yet. The Mint still has a bit of a buffer. And again, that's just by my guesstimate and knowing how many coins from speaking to the different Mint APs, what their target was of an inventory build. But we have seen on the private side, silver bars, coins, rounds. Most of the private mints are delayed a couple of weeks. Premiums haven't really moved a lot yet, maybe just a little bit on private products, maybe 20 cents. But 90% has moved quite drastically. Really, in the past 2 weeks, it's jumped about $1 on the wholesale side, and it's getting really hard to find any 90% in quantity. So,
and about 2/3 of that jump was last week, right? And then third roughly this week.
Yeah, it continued this week. I think it jumped probably about another 40 or 50 cents this week on average on wholesale. It depends on the wholesaler, how much they had, and what big orders they took. But it definitely continues. Prices continue to rise on the wholesale side, and you're actually seeing the retail prices start to jump quite a bit here this week. We were forced to raise our prices at SD Bullion because wholesale prices jumped above what we'd been selling retail at. And again, as we pointed out about 4 or 5 weeks ago, 90% is always the inflection point. So we'll see. Again, the trend has continued with the 90%. The premiums continue to rise, and supply continues to shrink in the 90%. So the
inflection point came exactly when you'd expect it. I mean, that's when we bottomed in silver. It came in that same week, too, which is very encouraging to see.
Right. So as far as the overall shortage perspective and outlook, I think the market will be able to recover, and we won't see any type of shortage like we saw in 2015, as long as we did bottom a couple of weeks ago and silver continues to trade 17.15 handle and on upwards towards 18. If we were to see any further weakness, if we saw a 16 handle in silver, the mint would, I think, most definitely burn through those final couple million coins, and we'd see an interesting situation again in silver. But if silver continues to kind of bottom range trade here and then start to move higher, I think both the U.S. Mint and then the private mints will be able to keep up with demand, and you won't see a drastic shortage like we saw in 2015, which is great for retail investors.
Do you think that the typical retooling and changing of dies and a shutdown that the mint would do towards the end of the year, as we've seen, year after year, set up a possible scenario where if we were in fact seeing 500,000 extra coins being sold on a weekly basis or more going forward, and it's definitely possible. That how likely would it be that the mint would possibly change their dies and turn off production? I mean, do you think that we can in fact estimate where they are when it comes to their own inventory management and those kind of decisions that they may be making going forward based on the behavior that they've done in the past?
Well, for the short term, the answer is yes. Long term, I think probably not. Because I think one thing that's a little bit misunderstood, or not, maybe not even misunderstood, but not well understood from the silver investing public is, yeah, sure, it does not take 4 or 6 weeks for the mint to flip dies. But the mint, what the mint is also doing is, for whatever reason, the mint likes to have an inventory. So they're actually minting 2017 coins during that period so they can build up an inventory. They're just not taking orders until the end of 2017. And typically the APs will take pre-orders for the 17 coins during that time, and then it really just turns out to a gut estimate or guessing game of how many coins is the mint going to produce, and they know the mint's normal weekly output versus their guesstimate of how many coins all the other APs have taken over that period. And most of them want to be conservative. So premiums are a little bit higher than normal during that period because it's the whole process is a little bit opaque and it's a little bit of guesstimate, and they don't want to be caught on the wrong side. Mm-hmm. So the answer in the short term is yes, it definitely could impact it a little bit. Long term, probably not as much because they're still producing coins. Like if you look at any January in this past decade, January's numbers are either the highest for the year, if not very close to the highest sales month for the year. And a lot of that is due to the fact that a good portion of December, they're actually minting to the next year's coins, and they're just not taking orders until at some point in January. Well, Elijah, we wanted to give the listeners a little bit of insight into your background and what makes you tick here. You're definitely not the average investor or a proponent of gold and silver, a youngster still in college. Most have never even heard of gold and silver. The average Silver Doctors reader is, I think, probably a 40 to 60 year old. So give us a little bit of your background. What made you interested in gold and silver and get into the markets?
Yeah, well, I've been interested in money and coin collecting for a long time, pretty much as long as I can remember. I have a lot of different interests and they kind of cycle around, and once in a while I've been interested in coin collecting. And about in 4th grade, I was actually homeschooled. I didn't go to public school when except for now going to college. I'm going to university. But in my earlier years, I was homeschooled. And in about 3rd or 4th grade, I believe, I wondered, I was interested in coin collecting, and I was wondering, how is money created? And I wanted to, one of the things we did, as homeschoolers is just, start writing a report on something you're interested in. And so I tried digging really deep into it. My dad helped with some of the research, and at the end we were like, wait, how does this really work? And when I was finished with the report, I still didn't really understand it. So many, many years later, this was probably now about 5 years ago from today, I was interested in it again, and I was like, let me just get to the bottom of this. And I learned about the Federal Reserve and how they can basically create money out of nothing, and how the Federal Reserve is kind of like a pseudo government agency. It's agency within the U.S. government, but it's not part of the U.S. government, and it actually has shareholders, which are the member banks. The banks in the United States are the shareholders of the Federal Reserve, so it's like almost like a private organization that's creating this money, and that the government doesn't even really create the money. The Federal Reserve lends the money to the government. I just learned more about this and how inflation works, that when you print more money, then it's basically steals money from all the other money in circulation, all the other people who have savings. It steals from them because the dollars are worth less. So I really wanted to, I saw other people on YouTube, listened to other people on YouTube spreading the message about this, and how it seems like also that it's not just that we're experiencing inflation right now, but that throughout history, when we have a currency that is entirely based on that the government says it is money and that doesn't have anything real to back it, like gold, throughout history, all those kinds of currencies have always fallen to zero. All fiat currencies, all paper currencies have fallen to the value of zero. So I really wanted to just share this with people and spread the message of how to prepare for the financial crisis that I think is coming. So I started a YouTube channel about 4 years ago now, and I started interviewing financial experts, and it's just really been great. The people I've interviewed have, posted the interviews on their website, and to get the message out more, and their viewers have then learned about me. So it's really they've really helped me grow my channel and really spread the message. Right now I have around 30,000 almost 30,000 subscribers, and just recently I started working with Silver Doctors, your team, and I'm producing the interviews Monday through Thursday, and on Friday, what we're doing right now, this SD Metals and Markets update we have. So every day for Silver Doctors now, every weekday, there's a new interview on their YouTube channel.
And your work is wonderful, too. It's been really wonderful to watch the growth of your YouTube channel and all the wonderful people you're interviewing. It's very insightful. So I'm definitely thrilled to see you come on board and see the expansion of the content that Silver Doctors is putting out every week.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun, guys.
Definitely. It's really been exciting so far, and thank you so much for the kind words, Eric.
All right. Well, we're excited about Elijah joining us. Again, tune in daily for his exclusive interviews and content on Silver Doctors. You can click on the SD podcast link at the top of the site and find all that daily exclusive content. So for the doc, Eric Dubin, Elijah Johnson, thanks for tuning into this week's SD Weekly Metals and Markets.